Serafina Cole had a gift she never asked for, and a past she never talked about. She lived alone in a small stone cottage at the edge of neutral territory, where the forest met the road, and most people knew better than to knock after dark. She was a healer, not the kind who worked with medicines and charts, but the kind who pressed her hands to a wound and felt what was wrong beneath the surface, the way a person can feel a crack in a wall before they see it. She had healed wolf pups and wanderers, and once, quietly, an elder from a pack 3 territories over, who had been cursed with something no one could name. Word traveled in the supernatural world the way smoke traveled through a forest, quietly, then everywhere. She was 26 years old and had already decided that she preferred her cottage to the world. So when Elder Marin arrived at her door before the sun was up, Serafina stood in the doorway with her arms folded and listened to the old woman speak, without changing her expression once. The Alpha King of the 7 territories was unwell, not from any illness anyone could identify. His wounds from the Great War 3 years ago had never fully healed, and in the years since, something had gone wrong beneath the surface of him. His wolf had gone silent. His healers had given up. His court was frightened, though none of them would say so out loud. Elder Marin set a sealed letter on the windowsill and said, "He is not dying of his wounds. He is dying of what the wounds left behind." Serafina told her she was not interested. Marin left the letter and walked back into the fog. By morning, Serafina had read it 3 times and packed her bag. She told herself it was because a royal summons was not something a person could ignore without consequences. She was a practical woman. She understood how power worked. She did not let herself think too long about the part of her that had always been unable to walk away from something broken. The journey to Draven Keep took 2 days. She rode with a wolf named Riven, the king's beta, who was tall and quiet, and spent most of the trip studying her, the way a person studies something that does not make sense to them. He was not unfriendly, he was simply careful. She understood careful people. The keep itself rose from the cliff like something that had grown there rather than been built. Black stone, iron gates, torchlight even in the afternoon. It was beautiful, the way a storm was beautiful, which meant it made her chest feel tight. The court was worse than the building. Every wolf in it looked at her with either curiosity or contempt, and she was not sure which she preferred. She was human, she was small, she was not impressive to look at, and she had long since stopped trying to be. She was taken to meet the king. Cale Draven sat at the head of a long war table, reviewing maps with 3 of his advisors. He did not look up when she was announced. He finished what he was reading, spoke 2 sentences to the man on his left, and then finally turned his attention to her. She had expected cold. She had expected arrogance. What she had not expected was absence. He looked at her the way a man looks at something when most of him is somewhere else entirely. His eyes were gray and very still, and behind them there was almost nothing. Not cruelty, not disinterest. Just a kind of hollow quiet that she recognized immediately, because she had seen it before, in people who had lost something so large that it had taken part of them with it. He told her she would begin the assessment in the morning. He did not say please or welcome or anything else. He turned back to his maps. She was shown to her room. She did not sleep. Sometime after midnight she heard the sound of movement in the courtyard below her window, and she looked out to find the king in the training yard, alone. He had no shirt, and the torchlight caught the scars across his back and chest and arms in a way that made her breath stop. She had seen scars before. She had healed dozens of them. But these were different. Even from this distance she could feel that they were not finished. There was something still moving in them, slowly, the way infection moves, except it was not infection. It was something older. She went back to bed and stared at the ceiling until dawn. The morning assessment was difficult. Cale submitted to it without protest, but without cooperation, sitting with his jaw tight and his eyes fixed on the far wall, as she moved around him carefully and pressed her hands to different points along his shoulders and back. She kept her touch professional. She kept her face neutral. When she reached the first major scar, a long diagonal mark across his left shoulder, she felt it immediately. It was like putting her hand against a door that something was pressing against from the other side. Heat and pressure, and beneath it, a sound she could not hear with her ears, but felt in her palms, a low vibration, like grief held in place for too long. She did not know what sound she made, but something in her reaction caused him to move. He stepped away from her and turned to face her, and for one moment his eyes were not hollow. They were sharp and startled, and very much present. He told her to get out. She left. Riven found her in the corridor 30 seconds later and said, quietly, "Whatever you did just now, do it again tomorrow." She came back the next day, and the next, and the one after that. Each session she worked on a different scar, moving slowly, carefully, never pushing further than he was willing to allow. She learned his limits without asking about them. She learned that he would sit still for exactly as long as it took before the silence became unbearable to him. And then he would ask a question, usually something clipped and functional, about her methods, or her background, or how long the process would take. She gave him honest answers. He seemed genuinely surprised by honesty, which told her more about his court than anything she had observed in the dining hall. She noticed the tea. It appeared outside her door on the 4th morning, a small clay pot of something that smelled like ginger and pine, which happened to be exactly what she preferred. She had not told anyone that. She mentioned it to no one. But the next morning it was there again. She noticed the way he positioned himself when a senior court advisor spoke to her dismissively at dinner. How Kale said nothing but shifted in his chair so that the full weight of his attention landed on the man, and the man went quiet almost immediately. She noticed that he remembered things, small things, a passing comment she had made about her brother, the name of the village where she had grown up, the fact that she did not like being in rooms with too many people. His wolf was stirring. She could feel it, faint but growing, like something waking after a long sleep. 3 weeks into her work, she made a mistake. She was working on the oldest scar, a wide, jagged mark across his ribs on the left side, and she went too deep without meaning to. It happened sometimes, when a wound had been carrying something for a very long time, and it was finally ready to release it. The memory broke open under her hands, like a sealed room suddenly given air. She saw a night of fire and chaos. She saw Kale running, fighting his way through a collapsing battle line, and ahead of him, a woman with dark hair who was falling, and the blow that hit him from the side, the one that was meant for her, the one he took without flinching, and the moment he reached her, and it was already too late. Serafina pulled back from the vision with a gasp. The room was very quiet. Kale was watching her. He had not moved, but every part of him had gone very still, the way animals go still when something important is about to happen. He knew she had seen something. She could see that he knew. She did not say she was sorry. She did not offer him pity, because she could see clearly that pity was something he would close a door against immediately and never open again. She looked at him and said simply, "She knew you tried." He was quiet for so long that she thought he was not going to speak at all. Then he said, "How do you know that?" "Because that scar has been trying to protect her even after she was gone," Serafina said. "It hasn't stopped. That's what I've been feeling in it." Something in his face changed, not dramatically, not with any tears or speeches. It was the smallest possible shift, like a lock that had been held shut by sheer force of will finally releasing, just slightly, just enough to let a little air through. He sat down on the edge of the table behind him and looked at the floor for a moment. She told him about her brother then, though she hadn't planned to, about the pack she had grown up in and then lost, about the reason she kept her bags light and her attachments lighter. She told him without looking for sympathy, the way she always said difficult things, factually, from a distance, because that was the only way she knew how to say them out loud without falling apart. He listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't offer her a solution, or try to reframe what she said, or tell her it would be all right. He simply stayed in the room with her, and let her words exist, and she realized, slowly, that this was the rarest thing anyone had ever given her. His wolf woke up completely that afternoon. She felt it like a change in the air, a pressure, and a warmth, and a steadiness that had not been there before. When she looked at him, both of them were looking back at her now, the man and the wolf together, and the wolf knew exactly who she was. She tried not to think about what that meant. The trouble arrived in the form of a man named Cassius, an alpha from a neighboring territory who came to the keep under the banner of diplomacy and spent the first evening of his visit watching Serafina across the dinner table with an expression she recognized and did not like. He made his move on the second day. In a formal meeting with Chaol and his advisors, Cassius proposed a trade alliance and included, as part of the arrangement, the transfer of the healer to his territory. She was valuable, her gift was rare, she could be very useful to his people. He spoke about her as though she were a library or a piece of equipment. Serafina was not in the room, but Riven told her about it afterward, and she heard enough from the corridor to understand what had been said before the door opened. What she saw when it opened was this: Chaol standing at the head of the table, and Cassius across from him, and the air between them so charged that even the advisors had leaned back in their chairs. Chaol was not shouting. He was not making threats. He was simply looking at Cassius with the full and complete attention of an Alpha King whose wolf had just returned after 3 years of silence. And that look alone was enough to make the temperature in the room feel like it had dropped. "Leave my keep," Chaol said. Cassius left. Serafina went to her room and started packing. She was not angry at Chaol. She understood that he had done what he thought was right. But she had spent her entire adult life making sure she did not become something that belonged to anyone, and she could feel it happening, slowly, quietly, in the accumulated weight of clay pots of tea, and remembered small things, and a wolf that looked at her like she was already decided upon. She had to leave before it was too late to leave cleanly. She was in the courtyard before sunrise with her bag over her shoulder. Chaol was already there. He was not in his formal clothes. He was in plain dark fabric, standing in the cold without a coat, and he looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. He looked like a man who had been holding something at arm's length for a long time, and had just decided to put it down. He did not block her path. He looked at her and said, "What would it take for you to stay?" "I'm not a court healer," she said. "I'm not a possession. I'm not something to be arranged and transferred and kept." "I know," he said. "I'm not asking you to be any of those things." "Then what are you asking?" He crossed the courtyard slowly and stopped in front of her. She could feel his wolf clearly now, patient and very certain, looking at her through his gray eyes with something she had no good word for except recognition. "My wolf chose you," he said. 3 weeks ago I thought that wolf was gone. I had stopped expecting it to come back. And then you put your hands on that first scar, and something happened that I don't have a clean explanation for." He paused. "I'm not asking you to stay for the keep. I'm not asking you to stay as a healer. I'm asking you to stay so I can have the chance to be worth choosing back." She looked at him for a long moment. She put her bag down. She did not say yes out loud. She did not need to, and he did not ask her to. They both understood that she was not the kind of person who gave easy answers, and he was not the kind of man who needed them. The last scar, the one over his heart, closed on its own the following morning. She found him at breakfast and saw it immediately in his face. Not finished, not fixed, healing, which was a different thing and, in her experience, a better one, because it meant the work was real. Cassius sent men to intercept her on a supply run later that week. Riven was with her. The men did not reach her. Chaol arrived first, and she did not ask him afterward how he had known or what had happened, because she could read the answer in the set of his shoulders and the careful way he checked that she was unhurt before he said a single word. Cassius did not try again. She moved her things into the keep quietly and without ceremony. The court learned quickly that she was not a guest, and not staff, and not a curiosity. They learned it from the way the Alpha King listened when she spoke, and from the way his wolf watched the room whenever she was in it, calm and attentive, like something that had finally found what it was looking for, and intended to stay close to it. She found him in the training yard one last time, same midnight hour, same torchlight. She came to the window the way she had on her first night, expecting to see him drilling alone in the dark, working his body past its limits, because he didn't know any other way to get through the quiet hours. He was standing still. When he heard her at the window, he turned around, and he waited, and she came down. She crossed the courtyard and stopped in front of him, and he looked at her the way he had looked at her in the early morning by the gate, with the wolf and the man both present, and both certain. His hands, scarred and steady, found hers in the dark. She had spent years keeping herself ready to leave. Light bag, no deep roots, always a door she could walk through cleanly. Standing there in the quiet of the training yard with her hands held in his, she found that she did not want one. She stayed,